Today we're going to talk about 7 subtle mistakes that keep many learners stuck on the intermediate plateau. The first mistake is misusing the word actually. At the intermediate level, you learn that actually means in fact or surprisingly. It's often used to correct someone or to introduce a contrast. The problem is that many learners start to overuse it, or they confuse it with words like currently or really. This becomes a plateau issue because native speakers use actually very selectively. When it's overused, it can make your speech sound repetitive or slightly unnatural. For example, you might say, "I'm actually living in London." If there's no surprise or correction involved, actually isn't necessary. You can simply say, "I'm living in London." The word actually suggests that someone believed something different before. Without that contrast, it feels unnecessary. Another example is starting sentences with actually as a filler. You might say, "Actually, I think it's a good idea." In many cases, you can simply say, "I think it's a good idea." However, if you are correcting someone, then it makes sense. For example, "Actually, the deadline is Friday, not Thursday." Here, you're gently correcting information. That's appropriate. A common confusion is between actually and currently. Someone might say, "Actually, I'm working on the report," when they mean right now. The correct sentence would be, "Currently, I'm working on the report." Or more naturally, "I'm working on the report right now." Actually is about contrast and correction. Currently is about time. To fix this, start paying attention to how native speakers use the word. You'll notice it's usually used to contradict an assumption. In your own writing, especially in professional emails, try removing actually and see if the sentence still works. Most of the time, it will. The second mistake is preposition errors. Prepositions are small words like in, on, at, to, and for, but they carry a lot of weight. At the intermediate level, you know the basic rules, but combinations with specific verbs and expressions can still cause problems. These errors are subtle. People understand you, but something feels slightly off. For example, you might say, "I'm interested on learning English." The correct preposition is in. So the sentence becomes, "I'm interested in learning English." Another common example is, "She depends of her team." In English, we say, "She depends on her team." Time expressions also cause confusion. Some learners say, "I'll see you on next week." In this case, we don't use on. The correct version is, "I'll see you next week." However, we do say, "I'll see you on Monday." Place and ability expressions are another trap. You might hear, "He's good in math," but the correct form is, "He's good at math." For emotions, learners sometimes say, "I'm afraid from spiders." In English, it's, "I'm afraid of spiders." Why does this keep you at the plateau? Because prepositions are strongly connected to collocations. Native speakers don't think about rules. They remember combinations. To improve, focus on learning words together, not individually. When you learn interested, learn interested in. When you learn depend, learn depend on. In your work emails, double check common phrases like discuss. And remember, we say discuss something, not discuss about something. Over time, exposure and repetition will make these patterns automatic. The third mistake is article slips. A, an, the, or no article at all. Articles are one of the most difficult parts of English because they depend on whether something is general, specific, known, unknown, countable, or uncountable. Intermediate learners often get them mostly right, but that remaining 20% makes writing sound slightly foreign. For example, you might say, she gave me an advice. Advice is uncountable, so we don't use an. The correct sentence is, she gave me advice, or she gave me a piece of advice. With abstract nouns, learners sometimes overuse the. You might hear, the happiness comes from within. If you're speaking generally, it should be, happiness comes from within. No article is needed because you're talking about happiness in general. Specificity matters too. I went to university. In British English means you attended as a student. But if you say, I went to the university, that suggests that you went to the building for a specific reason, maybe to meet someone. Understanding the difference adds nuance to your English. Plural generalizations are another area. Instead of, the children love the music, if you're speaking generally, you would say, children love music. No, the is necessary because you're not referring to specific children or specific music. To improve, review the core idea. Use the for specific, known items. Use a or an for singular, non-specific, countable nouns. And use no article for general plurals or uncountable nouns. But beyond rules, immerse yourself in correct input. When writing professional documents like resumes, notice phrases such as experience in project management, where no article is used. The fourth mistake is collocation errors. Collocations are natural word combinations. For example, we say make a decision, not do a decision. At the intermediate level, you may know many words, but you combine them in ways that are grammatically correct yet unnatural. For instance, you might say, I did a mistake. The natural collocation is, I made a mistake. Another example is do a crime. In English, we say commit a crime. With adjectives, we say strong coffee, not powerful coffee. These pairings are fixed in the language. Why does this matter? Because advanced fluency is not just about correct grammar. It's about sounding natural. Native speakers rely heavily on collocations, and incorrect pairings subtly signal non-native use. To fix this, start learning words in chunks. Instead of learning conclusion, learn reach a conclusion. Use reliable dictionaries that show example sentences. Over time, these chunks will replace translation in your mind. Let's continue with mistake number 5. Overusing simple connectors. Many intermediate learners rely heavily on and, but, so, and because. These are correct, but overuse makes your language sound basic, especially in professional contexts. For example, I like coffee and tea, but I prefer coffee. A more advanced version could be, I like coffee and tea alike. However, I prefer coffee. Instead of, it's expensive but good, you could say, it's expensive, however, the quality is excellent. Or, although it's expensive, it's worth it. For addition, instead of, he's smart and hardworking, you might say, he's not only smart, but also hardworking. Or, moreover, he's reliable. For cause and result, instead of, it rained, so we canceled, you could say, it rained, consequently, we canceled. Expanding your range of connectors improves flow and professionalism. Start learning them in categories: addition, contrast, cause, and result. Practice writing short reflections about your week and challenge yourself to avoid repeating the same connector twice. In professional emails, replacing but with however can sound more formal and diplomatic. With practice, your speech and writing will feel more structured and mature. The 6th mistake is phrasal verb confusion. Phrasal verbs are combinations like look up, turn off, or get along. They are extremely common in everyday English, but they can be confusing because they are idiomatic and sometimes have multiple meanings. For example, instead of saying, I searched the word in the dictionary, a more natural version is, I looked up the word in the dictionary. With separable phrasal verbs, word order matters. We say, turn the lights off or turn them off, but not turn off them. Some phrasal verbs have multiple meanings. Make up can mean invent, reconcile after a fight, or apply cosmetics. Context is everything. If you say they made up after the argument, it means they reconciled. If you say they made up a story, it means they invented it. Avoiding phrasal verbs completely can make your English sound overly formal or stiff. Native speakers use them constantly. To improve, group them by particles. For example, up often suggests completion or increase, as in eat up or speed up. Try rewriting formal verbs into phrasal verbs when appropriate. Instead of postpone, say put off. Instead of continue, say carry on. This will make your English more dynamic. Finally, mistake number 7 is false friends and subtle word choice errors. False friends are words that look similar to words in your native language, but have different meanings in English. For example, sensible in English means practical or reasonable, not sensitive. So instead of saying, I'm sensible to cold, the correct sentence is, I'm sensitive to cold. Another example is fabric, which means material for clothes, not factory. So instead of he works in a fabric, you would say he works in a factory. Word choice also includes near synonyms. For instance, big and large are often interchangeable, but certain combinations are more natural than others. We say, tell me the truth, not say me the truth. Small differences like these build precision. To improve, identify common false friends in your language pair and study them directly. When using a thesaurus, always check example sentences to confirm correct usage. Reading novels can help you develop nuance, while business articles help you refine professional vocabulary. In presentations, choosing impact instead of effect can sometimes sound stronger depending on context. These small refinements move you from good to excellent. So there you have it. 7 subtle mistakes that keep you on the intermediate plateau. Misusing actually, preposition errors, article slips, collocation mistakes, overusing simple connectors, phrasal verb confusion, and subtle word choice issues. None of these are dramatic errors. That's why they're so powerful. If this was helpful, let me know which mistake resonates most with you. Is it prepositions, articles, collocations? Share your thoughts. Thanks for spending the time with me. I'll see you in the next lesson.